St. Paul the Apostle says, "Forgetting what lies behind and straining forward to what lies ahead, I press on toward the goal of Christ Jesus. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen." Please be seated. While sitting in a movie theater in 1990, Danny Rubin, an aspiring scriptwriter and movie director, asked himself absent-mindedly, if a person could live forever, if they could be immortal, how would they change with time? And the idea was born for a movie released in 1993 that has become a classic romantic comedy, Groundhog Day. Now, when I first saw it, I thought it was just that, a romantic comedy. But since becoming a Christian, I have seen in it 3 parables that teach us about what it can mean to live in an eternal present. In the movie Groundhog Day, we meet Phil Connors, played by Bill Murray, who is an arrogant, self-centered, selfish weatherman, sent to cover the emergence of Punxsutawney Phil from his hole on February 2nd, Groundhog Day. Phil hates the assignment. Phil the person, we're not sure how Phil the groundhog feels about it, but Phil the person absolutely hates this assignment, having to go out into Hicksville, right, and cover this ridiculous event. The people and the place are objects of his scorn and ridicule as he basically phones in with his coverage of the event. You know, he kind of does some sort of perfunctory, announcement of what's going on, and then he tosses the microphone aside to his cameraman and walks off on his way to more important things, right? He has people to see and things to do that are far more important than anything going on in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. He had to meet with people. He had things to do much more important than anybody in that hip little town. He can't wait to leave and get on with his more important life. But he becomes trapped in Punxsutawney, this horrible place, and with these horrible people. You see, between the idea, seeing the time the idea occurred to him in the making of the movie, Rubin changed the premise from a man changing as the world around him changed over time. The Highlander series and vampire movies would have to tackle that trope, right? What is it like to live forever when the whole world, everything else gets old around you? He changed the premise to someone having to repeat the same day in the same place with the same people again and again and again. Phil is caught in an eternal present. At first, the eternal present, robbed of the goals provided by his own self-importance, seems like a hell, right? What is the meaning of life if it's not about my goals, my objectives, my plans? Life has no meaning. And so, Act 1 of the movie is a wonderfully comedic sequence of Bill Murray, playing Phil Connors, eating himself to death. What would you do? What would you eat if there were no consequences? Well, I know what I do. I would raid the bakery counter at Starbucks. I'm just like, yeah, all that. And so he has this, he's in the diner, he has a stack of pancakes, he's got the milkshakes that he's like sucking in, with one mouth while he's eating with the other. He tries drinking himself into oblivion. All basically is a wonderful trope of all the self-destructive behaviors that we engage in when we want to try to escape our normal, everyday life. Ultimately, not satisfied with that, Bill Murray's character, Phil Connors, engages in ever more creative suicide attempts, in which culminates in him stealing Punxsutawney Phil and driving over the cliff in a pickup truck with a fiery fireball explosion. I'm going to take you all with me if I have to. It's a parable, this first act is a parable of basically living life and encountering the people in your life with the kind of, oh, you again. What if you live life that way? The people that you meet day by day, just a trial to be around, a chore to be with. Then Phil distracts himself by fixing his energy on a worldly goal, an attempt to win the affections, this is family programming after all, of Rita, his producer. Phil's eternal present becomes consumed with chasing after her. And Act 2, which Bill Murray's friend and one of the film's co-directors, Harold Ramis, knew would be right up Bill Murray's comic alley, as he tries each and every repeated day to try to outsmart the outcome with Rita. Right? So if he tries to make a joke and it lands flat, the next he tries to remember, then the next day he lands the joke, and then the date that evening moves along. He remembers, tries to remember her favorite ice cream. And then he miraculously produces her favorite. Oh, that's my favorite too. And since he continually tries to outsmart and manipulate Rita to obtain his objective. But although he gets tantalizingly close to his goal, it always manages to elude him. A parable for how our efforts to seize life on our own terms will always come to naught. No matter how much we achieve, no matter how hard we work to stay one step ahead of everyone, or just one step ahead of consequences, no matter how creatively we rationalize our own selfishness, we cannot create a life that's actually worth living on our own. Which is to say, we can't escape death itself. For the essence of sin in our lives is to make life one darn thing after another. To me, that's the effect of sin. Sin is not glamorous or exciting. Sin turns life banal, boring, unlivable, and inescapable living death, like being trapped in a meaningless circle day after day. That's a life ruled by sin, or a life ruled by our own quest for accomplishment and achievement. I think that's basically what Paul is getting at in this first paragraph of today's lesson in Philippians. He gives you, in a sense, his achievement tape. This is his CV. This would be a good resume for an aspiring Pharisee of Paul's day. Circumcised on the 8th day, sacramental, check. A member of the people of Israel, ethnic, check. Tribe of Benjamin, Hebrew born of Hebrews, as the equivalent of my mother was the daughter of the American Revolution. I'm sorry, Texas independence. As to the law, a Pharisee, I was an A student. As to zeal, a persecutor of the church. What zeal in Paul's day, what zeal was a code word for being willing to use violence to achieve Israel's national ethnic independence. It was zeal meant you were willing to, beat people up to get them to toe the line. If you couldn't get to the Romans, well, at least you could get to those horrible sinners down the street. We'll pick on them if we can't beat the Romans. As to righteousness under the law, blameless. Meaning, doesn't mean I was morally excellent. It simply means I was awesome at following all the rules, unlike all the other losers in my village. Right? So they sent me to Jerusalem, to the graduate student, the graduate school of rule following. And Paul says that when he met the risen Jesus, when he encountered the life that Jesus had on offer, he realized that that sort of life in which he was trapped, doing one thing again and again and again, that the goals, the ends, and the means by which and to which he was living were a disguised death. They were a dead end. They were going nowhere in a hurry. In the end, they were empty. And he says, I regard them as lost. He says, I regard them as rubbish, which is a very polite NRSV translation of the word skybola. Skybola is what we call in the business a hapax legomenon in the New Testament. It means a word that only appears once, because it's a rude word. It's a word that technically refers to, say you have a group like a family living together in a one-room, house or hut. And in the middle of the night, they're not going to go to the latrine. They're not going to go out to where everybody in the village believes themselves. You have a chamber pot, right? Skybola was what you emptied out into the street in the morning from that pot. Paul says, all my achievements, all that running in a hamster wheel, All that trying to live life on my terms was nothing more than skyward when in comparison to something else that I've encountered. Like Saul of Tarsus, who became Paul, Phil Connor encounters something that changes him in this loop in which he feels trapped. Phil's life is fulfilled only when he stops trying to escape it, when he stops chasing after his own goals. His heart has to be broken, and not by Rita, but by a homeless man who dies as Phil passes him in an alley. And one of the poignant moments of the film, the sequences, where you see Phil doing all the things he did for Rita, like trying to outsmart the outcome. You know, how can I arrange things? How can I fix this man in one day so that he doesn't die at the end of it? And he exhausts himself trying to do all this. And ultimately, he is outsmarted. His goal is frustrated because he isn't God, after all. He has to learn that. But along with learning that, he has learned to die to himself, to give up what he was chasing after, and love someone else for a change. That's when Phil truly started living. And that is the parable of the second act of the third act of the movie. We see Phil, after this encounter, spending more time actually on himself. But now he's spending it, you see him in the diner, instead of stuffing his face, he's got mounds of books that he's reading. And then he goes and he gives this eloquent speech about the true meaning of Groundhog Day, that he has people in tears. He's spending time on himself learning, but it's in order to bless other people now. Not to show how smart he is, but to enrich the lives and understanding of others. We see him going about the town doing good works, because evidently we're supposed to infer that he spent all these endless days learning about his community. What are the needs? What are people's lives like? And he runs around just in the nick of time, helping, some elderly lady stuck in a car through, and he pushes them out of the intersection. He saves a boy falling out of a tree. He gives the mayor the Heimlich. He goes around the town doing all these sorts of things. Because he's got to know other people's lives. He's invested in them. And somewhere along the way, he's taken piano lessons, because in this beautiful conclusion as we end the third act of the movie, Phil is leading the town's celebration in the town hall at the piano, singing raucous songs. It's a moment of joy. Phil has found joy in giving himself away to the people of Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania. Instead of the people he scorned, now they're the people he deeply loves. He spends his eternal present, his day of days, being a blessing, a source of new and flourishing life for those with whom he has been placed to live. He loves them for who they are and gives himself away to them and finds joy in the process. And I think it's this sort of joyful, radiantly surrendered life that St. Paul is trying to get at in the second half of this morning's epistle, in which he moves from his life as a Pharisee, the life that he considers a total loss, to his new life in Jesus Messiah. A life in which he had to die to his old self. And instead, Paul embraced the hated Gentiles, whom he scorned so deeply, and instead he spends his life, he dedicates his life to suffering with them in order to bring them the good news that Jesus loved them too and has a new life on offer for them. When the resurrection breaks into our eternal present, our daily life, that we get, if you really think about it, is so much of our life repeated, really, day by day? But when the resurrection breaks in, that life is transformed from skyward, from one darn thing after another, as we chase death by trying to live life on our own terms, to a repeatedly unique opportunity. A repeatedly unique opportunity to suffer with and love those whom God has placed in our way, placed in our lives. To receive others not as a burden, oh, you again, but as a gift. Oh, you again. That's the difference of the power of the resurrection breaking out in a person's life. It gives us, the resurrection life gives us a chance to learn and to be a new creation in the midst of the old, not trying to escape it, but taking it with both hands in order to bless it, to embrace it, to enter into the good work, to give ourselves over to the good work of redeeming it, transforming it, and making it flourish with joy. This is the power of the resurrection. And it's a power that's not just for some day far away. There was a preacher at a healing conference I attended who said, the typical Episcopalian doesn't pray for healing because basically our traditional ethic is that you keep the stiff upper lip and hope it doesn't hurt too bad for too long before you die. That's the Episcopal ethic, right? The life of the resurrection, joy, and love, even in the midst of suffering, even in the midst of having to repeat the same difficult relationships and tasks. When the resurrection and new creation and love breaks in, it's not just for the day with a capital D in which all will be raised with Jesus. It's something for today. Today. It can transform this very moment of your life. As individuals and as a congregation, may we forget all that lies behind, all that skyline, all that shame and that guilt, those mistakes, all our achievements too, all the things that we would be proud of and brag about. We've got to leave all of that behind. Forget about it, Paul says. Leave it behind. There's so much baggage. Forget the sins you've committed yesterday and the death you've died day after day. And strain forward, Paul says. Strain forward. Embrace, give yourself to what lies ahead. An eternal present. An eternal present. A day with God's joy and love being made manifest in Christ Jesus our Lord.